listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord!
Praise God! Give away!
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and with me today is Sean.
Hello.
And this is a video podcast, so if you're listening on the audio, you can watch on YouTube. We're using a little bit different setup than we normally do with microphones and stuff, so it might sound a tiny bit different. Just because our technical issues trying to record it online were so horrific. We just had to do this a day late and get it out Tuesday night instead of Tuesday morning or early Wednesday. But
And if you're listening to the audio-only version, let us know how the audio quality is with the mic setup. Because we may go with this if it's not too big of a change for people.
Yep, so this week we're talking about Spawn, the 1997 feature film adaptation of the Todd McFarlane comic book. We'll also be discussing Spider-Man Homecoming and some other recent news and things we've been watching. And before we get into all the movie stuff, just in terms of news, we're recording this on Tuesday, July 11th, and we just saw some news as a bit of a bombshell, in that Quentin Tarantino is going to be making a movie about the Charles Manson family and the murders committed by them. And apparently he's... Jennifer Lawrence and Brad Pitt have been approached for the movie, aren't on board or anything. But this is... and then also it says like the script details are a little bit fuzzy. But there's some discussion about like maybe the story centers on Sharon Tate, the wife of Roman Polanski, who was murdered by Manson and his followers. It's going to be produced by the Weinstein, so... kind of a completely different film from the most recent stuff that Tarantino had done in Django Unchained and The Hateful Eight, which are both Westerns that were not your typical Westerns. So this is a big departure and brings him back to, well, not the present era.
Yeah.
He hasn't made a film set in the quote-unquote present-ish era since, Jackie Brown, or no, Kill Bill?
Yeah, because after Kill Bill was Inglourious Bastards, and then Django Unchained, then Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like this will be, I don't think we're going to get, a Death Proof or Kill Bill or even Inglourious Bastards. This will probably be more of a
Jackie Brown
as far as like, maybe not what you would expect. I mean, this is probably what most people expect now because this isn't something that is just some fictional account. You know what I mean? Like, these are real people.
Yeah, it'd be the first thing he's tackled that's an adaptation of a real event.
Yeah, so I don't think he's going to go super pulpy with it. Like, no pun intended. But, I don't think he's going to, take advantage of the situation to make some, something exciting or, cinematically provocative or anything like that.
Will it be his Zodiac?
Yeah. I mean, I hope I think he's probably going to take this pretty seriously. I mean, he's definitely capable of it.
Yeah.
He's not like a one-trick pony, Again, I love Jackie Brown, and I like that change he made, But then he went in the totally opposite direction to Kill Bill after that. So he has a lot of range. Very smart guy, obviously is great at writing dialogue. So I can't wait to see what he does with this. And not from a perspective of somebody obsessed with the Manson murders and you know what I mean? Like that.
Just to see what Tarantino does in a non-Western.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are, obsessed with serial killers or very interested in them. And it is fascinating from a psychological standpoint. But yeah, it gets weird whenever people take joy in
watching things about real life murders of people that actually existed.
Yeah. And you're taking enjoyment from a maybe the morally wrong elements from that.
People getting too excited about deaths and
yeah, I mean it's
I'm excited just because it's a Tarantino movie that won't be, even though I like Django and Hateful Eight I was kind of more mixed on. I need to rewatch it. It's so freaking long is the problem, but this is a foray into something that should be a little more approachable for a mainstream audience again from Tarantino, even though I think Django is his most or highest grossing movie if I remember correctly. But
it's very this is totally surprising because
not what I expected.
He keeps talking about only having a few features in him, and he's never talked that I know of. Never talked about the Manson murders being like he's talked a lot about different things he'd always like to do, even Friday the 13th. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like this coming out of left field and supposedly being like, oh, this is what's happening now, not just something he's kind of thinking about. If they've approached Brad Pitt and Jennifer Lawrence, then this just seems like it's moving forward, and I think they're looking for co-financers. So
yeah, we'll have to wait and see as more comes out on that and details on the script, because it's kind of unknown exactly what element of that series of murders they're going to be covering. There's just speculation.
Also, he got married recently, so I don't know if he said that. Congrats, Tarantino.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for more news on that as it comes along. Some other news that kind of ties into Spider-Man Homecoming is that the Venom movie that's been discussed that Tom Hardy's going to be in for Sony is apparently going to have the Bride of Venom in it. So, and then the villain's supposed to be Carnage. So, and I think all indications were that it's going to be like an R-rated movie, which for the types of stories, you know, like the Venom and Carnage can allow for, makes sense. And
so is the Bride of Venom can that suit be on multiple people at once, or just one?
Just one, I think one at a time.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to remember, because in the comics, I think Spider-Man had it, and then he got rid of the black suit symbiote that became Venom. And then he wore a cloth suit that was black for a while, which is kind of confusing. Mm-hmm. And then he eventually got rid of the black suit and then wore the normal suit again.
So this isn't going to be a case where we have Venom, Bride of Venom, and Carnage running around. I mean, we could, but...
No, well, Carnage and Venom are separate symbiotes.
Yes. So, but I'm saying it's not going to be a situation where the climax of this film is Carnage trying to kill the Bride of Venom and Venom's, you know what I mean? Like it's, or, you know, vice versa or whatever.
So apparently in the comics, Eddie Brock's wife or ex-wife, Anne, was shot by a character who was called the Sin Eater, and her life was saved by the symbiote, and it led to her depression and suicide. And there's really no details known about the plot's going to be, so who all knows what's going to happen in this movie? It sounds like it's going to be kind of overstuffed already at the amount of stuff that's going to be in it.
Yeah.
And especially if there's no Spider-Man, because I know, like, the Marvel side, and like Kevin Feige that runs Marvel has been very adamant that Venom would not be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, but, you know, who knows if that's actually going to be in the case, but...
So, do we know who's directing this yet?
Did they announce a director? I don't think they had. I know that before.
So it's like a project that comes from maybe writer, producers, like, you know, it could be. It almost sounds like a design by committee thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a writer. You know, they got some writers on there, but it almost sounds like very much them trying to build another thing from, you know what I mean? Like, okay, we need to make this thing. What can we put in here? And then they give a director an assignment with a writer. Like, okay, make this, you know, when it's like...
Yeah, I mean, they have, like, current writers on it. Jeff Pinkner and Scott Rosenberg. But I don't think then they have Tom Hardy, but... I know for a while, like, the Sony was going to have, like, the Spider-Man Cinematic Universe, and there's different people attached to that over different periods of time. I think at one point Drew Goddard was attached to it that directed Cabin in the Woods, and I think he wrote the Martian that Ridley Scott directed. So and then he was, like, an alumni of, I think, like, some of the Joss Whedon stuff at some point, but I don't know who's attached to this right now, so... Then also tying into the podcast, the never gonna happen, most likely, Spawn remake or reboot that Todd McFarlane wants to direct, produce, write, and have full control over is being held up because of that very fact that Todd McFarlane, who's never directed a film, wants to, you know, have full control of it, and he's not like selling a script to be optioned and turned into something by the studio. He wants it to be, you know, he comes in with this idea and makes it. And he's shooting for a lower budget level. I think he said like around $10 million. So lower than the 1997 Spawn by, you know, I think that one was like a budget of $40 million, so a quarter of that. He doesn't want to give away any control of the project, wants full control of the entire production and the screenplay. So I think that's what's going to hold this up and make it either not happen or be very difficult to happen. Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of people remember the movie The Spirit that Frank Miller directed after he was involved in the Sin City adaptation. That movie was just a disaster. Like, it didn't do well at the box office. It was panned. And then they said, well, maybe these comic writers and, artists, we shouldn't just let them have a movie if they have no proven directing credentials. Or they've only co-directed with, Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
And so I think that Todd McFarlane's problem is just that he's not a pre-existing commodity with successful screenplays behind him and other projects. I mean, from what I know, I haven't seen him, I don't think he's made shorts or stuff. I mean, we've even made multiple shorts. Not that makes us qualified to do anything, but the fact that he wants to go into directing a movie, sometimes it's like a recipe for disaster. If somebody doesn't have any experience in it. Now, there's sometimes Jordan Peele in Get Out, that was his directorial debut. And so far, in terms of the horror thriller world, probably our top movie of the year so far, or at least, or right in the running for it.
He at least had a lot of experience being heavily involved with.
But he was on that show
skits
forever and wrote.
Yeah, and he talked about kind of the production cycle when they were making new shorts every week essentially. And even though he wasn't directing, he obviously was writing. Helping him put together, having a lot of creative input, and saw that process happen over and over.
As opposed to Todd McFarlane, he would do in-person intros for the Spawn animated series that ran on HBO in the 90s, which I actually watched the entire run of that not too long ago. And those are always a very era-specific feel from those intros. But
I mean, Netflix has been making a lot of smart choices, but you could see them trying to come to a deal with okay, here's what we'll do.
Very hands-off.
Yeah. So you could, like I said, they make smart decisions. So they give a lot of great directors money. You know what I mean? Somebody mentioned, hey, they gave them $60 million or something for the Death Note American version. But again, Adam Wingard, a pretty safe bet at this point of making at least a solid film on a base level.
Because he had he had before, in terms of movies that everyone's kind of aware of, at least in the horror world, You're Next and The Guest. And then the Blair Witch, which even though it underperformed, I think it still turned a profit, was profitable, and wasn't a huge disaster for the studio.
Yeah, it wasn't a god awful film. It just wasn't super exciting. So
so Netflix, even though they were pretty hands off with stuff, I still think they would probably be
they made good decisions. Yeah.
About you writing, producing, directing, and doing everything. Maybe we should bring in some people to help tidy this up.
Yeah,
that have experience.
You would think they would kind of work something out, okay, we'll give you $20 million, but have a co-director, and you can kind of, I don't know, just get somebody that Todd McFarlane signs off on, okay, this is somebody I work well with, I could trust.
Tommy Wiseau, director of The Room.
Yes. It would still maybe turn out better than 97's Spawn.
I mean, so it's one of those things where I'll believe it when I see it. It's been rumored for essentially since the first one came out. But, if it ever actually happens, who knows?
Speaking of Tommy Wiseau, did you hear that I think James Franco directed that film he did on him in character?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Disaster Artist, the movie where James Franco plays Tommy Wiseau making the movie The Room in the movie. I want to see it.
Did James Franco just get cast in something else? Or
he got cast in a Coen Brothers project.
Yes, that's what it was, yeah.
Let's see.
Speaking of Spider-Man,
smart career move.
Speaking of Spider-Man, I did not like him in those first movies. I didn't like James Franco in them much. I like him now and a lot of things he's done, but he just rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. He almost felt like comic booky. You know what I mean? He felt very paper thin, and that's something I kind of didn't like about those first films. Every time he was on screen, I was ugh, this is just a character that is here to fill a role and not a real developed person.
I just remember when I watched that, I thought that it's James Franco looked quite a bit like Hayden Christensen that played Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars prequels. Maybe they could have got James Franco because he's proven he's a better actor over time.
Yeah.
But they had Natalie Portman, and George Lucas did that to her in terms of the dialogue he wrote. So, but yeah, so
yeah. I mean, I like James Franco like pretty much everything else I've ever seen him in.
Yeah.
And I haven't watched the movie since then, but that was the first time I'd ever seen him on screen. So maybe now kind of get what he was
two of
going
those movies
for,
are a little bit different era too when you rewatch them now.
Like Freaks and Geeks though, prior to that, I guess it was prior to that.
Yeah,
he was great. You know what I mean? I loved him in that, but I didn't see it until years after.
Let's see. Other news, Stranger Things, to pronounce it without the southern twang that shows up. Stranger Things. Okay. Stranger Things, Season 2, is going to premiere on October 27th, which is a Friday, so it comes out with just enough time to binge watch it before the Halloween parties. And everyone can go and dress up as characters from the show.
Yeah, you have like 48 hours to make your new costumes.
Well, yeah, the debuts on the Friday the 27th, and most of the parties, based on when Halloween's going to fall, will probably be on that Saturday the 29th, so you really have less than 24 hours to watch it.
That's good. There's going to be some good thrown together costumes, because by next year, they'll be played out, so you won't be, those costumes will be too old, so you've got... Unless you're going to pull them out at Christmas or something.
So be on the lookout for that. They have a new poster for the show, and they had a short video and stuff. So
I'm not really love that first season. I'm not excited. I won't be excited until I'm sitting down and hitting play, because I'm just like
Netflix series. It's the positive and the negative. So Twin Peaks, the revival or the return. Sorry. The return, you have to wait week to week, or sometimes it's a 2-week wait or something. So then you continue to watch it, and each week there's the recaps, and everybody's kind of at the same point on the same page. The thing that becomes a little bit tiring at these Netflix series, and then it's also a benefit and a negative, is that they drop them all at once. So really, if you don't get spoiled at all, you absolutely have to watch that the first weekend, because if you want to read recaps or be on the internet at all, people are going to be spoiling stuff. Mm-hmm. And if it's a comedy or something where the story's not as important, like Kimmy Schmidt or stuff like that, that's fine. It doesn't really matter if somebody spoils some out of context joke.
Yeah.
But if people are posting a meme about so if you Stranger Things season 1, spoilers for season 1, there's a character named Barb that was heavily memed and made into a big internet thing. So if you didn't get into it until 2 weeks after it came out, you've already had something spoiled for you in a major way. Not that was a huge part of the scene. I mean, huge part of the overall
still,
story.
it's fun to go in
So you've
fresh.
got to watch the stuff. Even with Twin Peaks, I watch it within an hour of it airing every Sunday, just because people will blast memes out almost immediately, or GIFs, or however you want to pronounce it, whoever you believe. And this is the pronunciation episode. But you have to watch stuff immediately. So with Netflix series, I look forward to them, but then it's I kind of gotta watch this in the smallest amount of time.
Yeah,
possible.
I'm probably not gonna binge that, being that it's Halloween weekend and stuff. I didn't binge watch the other one. I probably took granted that's
I watched
kind of
over the
binging.
course of
it was
4 days.
Yeah, it was 4 days or so, and it wasn't a lot of episodes. But and like I said, I'll be really excited once I'm hitting play.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I'm there's so many other great movies and TV shows. Twin Peaks is on right now, and I'm fine.
We're hitting peak TV because, not to be too much wordplay, but you have, the return of Twin Peaks, which nobody thought was going to happen 3 years ago. I remember in college watching it for the first time. I was like, oh, God, maybe they'll make a graphic novel at some point. Never thought we'd get a show. Then you have all Game of Thrones comes back, and within the next week, you have all these shows that are out there. There's too many to watch.
What?
And it's how Stranger Things made such a huge impact on general society when it came out. I think that'll keep up, but
it's the Netflix shows too. It's almost like they are designed to be binge watched. The writers kind of know now.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a different type of viewing experience, because it does it makes you want to keep watching for sure.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed Twin Peaks. Having this,
well, you have Twin Peaks is the anti-show to some extent.
Yeah, and I saw somebody on Twitter say something like, "Oh, I've managed to avoid all Twin Peaks spoilers. I'm waiting to the end to binge watch it." And normally I don't tell people how to watch a show, but I was honestly, I was I really do feel like this show was intended to be watched with not only with the internet, but I was you also, even if you do watch it all at the end, I would give yourself a little bit of time between episodes, or at least blocks of episodes, because there's so much to digest.
Well, because we watched so we did those videos. We watched the first 4 episodes all within 24 hours and did our first recap video. That's a lot of information to digest. Like looking back, I almost wish they just released them normally so you could digest it. But I think they want to get people into the flow of it.
Yeah, because it was a very different thing.
But so the Stranger Things, I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm hoping that they maintain the energy and the momentum they had from the first season. But I also do look forward to and dread the fact that they're all dropping at once. So you kind of got to watch them quickly. And then if you're in a situation you have a wife, like I have a girlfriend, like you can't just watch it by yourself.
Yeah.
if you're watching it with someone, you have to wait.
Exactly. Yeah,
you got to get 2 schedules to line up, no matter what's going on. So that makes it more difficult to watch those shows like that versus the weekly shows. You know when they're on, and you know you got to set aside.
Yeah, which
time.
is a lot easier to watch 1 hour
versus
week.
8 or whatever.
Yeah, 10 hours.
Well, hopefully too. I don't know if they released the episode count for Stranger Things season 2. Season 1 was 8 episodes, which I love the idea of just letting it last as long as it needs to. Because I think their Marvel shows suffer from making them be 13 episodes because they really don't have 13 episodes of material usually. So if they're starting to let shows just be as long as they need to be, then that definitely makes it leaner and more digestible.
So I'll talk about it later, but do you know how many episodes that Castlevania show is?
4.
Yeah, 4 22-minute episodes. Which for me, I'm bad about committing to stuff. I'm like, okay, I can make it through this. So I managed to watch all 4 of those. It took me 3 days, but...
Yeah. Let's see, other news. There's a VR project that will have Robert Englund in it that's being directed by Alex Aja. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. And
it's essentially like a anthology. Is it called Campfire
Creepers?
Yeah.
Campfire Creepers. So VR, and looking at some of the pictures here...
I haven't seen the pictures yet.
The VR rig is a bunch of Blackmagic micro cinema cameras, on some rig all together with fisheye lenses. So it'll be very interesting to see how this works. Just because VR, there's been some VR experiences on Facebook that you can watch. Where you move your phone around, and that's the most prevalent form of VR at this point, I think. And there's the Oculus and stuff like that, but those are more expensive. And there's the PlayStation VR. And then there's also the Gear VR, the phones where you put your phone in the Google Cardboard thing or the Samsung thing.
Oculus, I think, is financing this, I believe. I know it's, or at least it's, maybe they have a deal because it's hitting the Oculus store first, they said. So I think they might have some exclusivity on the release window, possibly.
Yeah.
But they said that, they're going to try to push, from the beginning when I tried VR and especially playing anything horror related like Resident Evil 7, it is the thing, I think, to take horror to the next level. I don't know about it being uninteractive like videos would be, but so I'm interested to see how this is going to end up and if it's going to be less effective or more effective. But definitely just kind of the excitement of this is a new medium to play in. This isn't painting, this isn't music, this isn't traditional filmmaking that has been around for 100 years. This is something new. So it's cool to see how they're going to try to push this and develop it as it grows over time.
Well, there's so you've had all these different things over the years that people have promised would be game changers. So you had the rash of 3D movies and 3D TVs. Then you have in current day it's 4K and HDR, the high dynamic range. So the 3D stuff, with Avatar and some of those movies that came out, and there's been a few movies since then that look good in 3D. It's just more of things are in the theater with you, so it helps give you a little bit different experience of a movie. So it's just taking a movie and giving you a little bit of a different twist on it. You get to see stuff in front of you. 4K is just giving you a higher fidelity image, but currently the fact that it's so hard to get 4K content to a TV means that, and in most of it is streaming over services where it's compressed. So you're not really getting the best experience anyway, so it looks marginally better than just standard HD on most TVs. So it's an improvement, but most people don't notice the difference or care. HDR is a little bit more of, you get more colors and the dynamic range is greater, so you get a better looking image that has if you look on your phone, a lot of times iPhones or Samsung phones have the HDR pictures. You can see if you look at clouds, it has all the different variations in the sky of the clouds and things like that. So those are just iterative processes. VR is a different process altogether.
Yeah.
And
it's not going to be oh, this is the way to make things now. It'll just be another medium to do certain things the best way you can do it. Not that it's going to replace like, oh, this is how you make a horror film now or a film now. It's just like, oh, maybe these certain experiences will work really good on this.
Because it's all experimental. There's no real set VR blueprint at this point. And like for Alien Covenant, they had a thing where you're like an alien inside of somebody before it burst out. And that was pretty cool, but like it was just a short 1.5 minute type thing. So how these VR experiences work, I will be very interested to see. It's going to launch exclusively in the Oculus store on Halloween in October. So
Did it say it was coming to anything else after that?
That's all that was on there.
I thought I kind of read that because I was like, I have the PSVR, and the video quality a lot of time on that stuff that's like the lowest resolution one. That's an actual.
So it's currently filming, and the first episode to be released this Halloween exclusively in the Oculus store. So it might hit other places at some point, but it's launching there. I mean, at this point, this will be such a niche thing because there's not that many Oculus Rifts out in the world. And out of all of the Oculuses that are sold, only a certain subset will be buying any of the content. So it'll continue to expand out over time as more VR stuff becomes mainstream and it either takes off or doesn't. So, like with horror, though, like I remember reading where people played the Oculus version of Alien Isolation, where like the kind of survival horror-ish type game, and they said it was like terrifying because you could like see the alien and stuff. So those experiences I think translate well for horror. How all that works and what form it takes and how long it takes to get mainstream acceptance, if it ever does, is yet to be seen. But I'm excited to see it.
For me, I think it's interactive when you can like look around. That's like one way. But for me, I think if you just have one other step, like if you can control your if you can control the movement at all, that puts you in it that much more to kind of, I guess, make you feel more connected, and it heightens the fear. And that's why I think like, games when you can actually move around, that'll be the really cool thing. The movies might be fine. I haven't seen anything that has been super scary other than like sound, like, you know what I mean? A lot of times the audio is really good and they might have stuff pop up and that's like one thing, but whenever you are forced to move through an environment and do certain things and it's in VR, that's when it's like, okay, this trumps watching horror films for me. Most like 95% as far as getting some sort of a reaction. Like there's a drama is one thing that gives you a reaction, but like as far as just pure fear that's coming out of just seeing a scene with no context, VR is very, very good at just doing that. When most films are a lot of things are so cliche now. It's just like whatever.
So it could be a new twist on stories you've already known, just to see that type of stuff.
And it's cool to see Alex. Is it Alexander?
I think it's Alexander's full name.
Yeah, and let alone Robert Englund, but the fact that he's doing this, it's cool to see what he's going to kind of do to kind of maybe push things further.
Getting a real filmmaker, not just tech people making something. So that's the interesting aspect too. Because I can only imagine what James Cameron would want to do with VR at some point, because he was like the pioneer of like the current 3D renaissance of stuff. If you consider that a good or bad thing, that's up to you. But
maybe he'll make the true Alien 3 in VR.
That would be cool.
Playable.
But so then one last bit of news before we move on. Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 3, Ash is going to have a daughter. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Because I know, like, initially, so going back to last season, the showrunner, Craig DeGregorio, left because of tensions with Rob Tapert over, like, wanting the character of Kelly to be Ash's daughter. And then they ended up not wanting to go with that, so the season ended the way it did. And then this season, he's going to have a daughter that's not her, right?
Yeah. From all I read, somebody, one of the interviews said something, was talking to, I almost said Ash, Bruce Campbell, and they said something along the lines of, like, asking about the season. And he said, oh, this is great. It's going to be great. Like, turns out Ash has a daughter, and he's got to, like, I think basically the evil is after her now because it knows, that's
his
somebody.
Family.
His family. And they said something along the lines of, oh, well, and you also got, that teenage daughter, and then you've got the other teenagers that are with you. And he made a point to say, like, they're not teenagers now, they're adults, which I always thought they were at least like early 20s.
Yeah.
But he said something like they're adults now, so that's going to be a change too. So maybe it's kind of either forward in time, like, maybe just a couple years, or maybe it's just like, okay, at this point, their characters might be a little bit different now. If they're maybe a little bit more grown up, or I don't know. But I do feel like I've seen them change from the beginning of season 1, that first episode, to this. there has been some changes with those characters.
Yeah.
And it's been nice to see some sort of growth, and it's not just kind of one-note jokes the whole time and getting the same stuff over and over.
Yeah, so we'll be on the lookout for more information about Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 3. I'm assuming it'll premiere around the same time as last year, in the fall. So.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. It came out, was it October last year?
I know the first season did. I don't remember.
Yeah,
I think it was same timeline. So I'll be on the lookout for more information on that as they have it. Now moving into what we've been watching. I guess I don't really have a chance to watch anything aside from Spider-Man and Spawn, but you watched the Castlevania series on Netflix, right?
Yeah. I decided to give that a chance because a lot of people were saying it was actually really good. It is an anime, but you know, don't let that deter you. But you know, it's an anime based on a video game, so it's kind of a niche thing already.
Yeah.
But it's focused around one of the Belmonts. I think it's Trevor Belmont, which the games a lot of times you play as a Belmont or Alucard or something like that. So this is one of the Belmonts, but it kind of starts out, I don't know, maybe 1400s or something like that. And the first couple episodes, a lot of people talked very highly of it. And first couple episodes, I was kind of like, this is fine. Like there's some kind of cool stuff, but there's some cool moments, but also some stuff that's just typical, little bit of cheese, you know?
Yeah.
And not that it was like off-putting at all, but I was like, this is almost like a take it or leave it thing. It's fine. Maybe it's just not for me. But somehow, some way, like by the end of that fourth episode, I was like, I really liked this. I don't know what it was, because it's not like there was a big change in tone. It's you know, they kind of had a direction they were going to go for it. And they didn't change that at all through those 4 episodes. I don't know if it's just the way things built. And by the time it got to that point, I was really like kind of hooked in, and I would definitely keep watching this, which I guess it got greenlit for season 2, which is going to be 8 episodes.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting that, like, why didn't they just, at first you'd think, why don't they just make this like Castlevania the movie part 1?
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, what, 120 minutes or something?
Yeah.
But I mean, I really do think it probably fits because it is easier to just watch little pieces at a time if you don't have a lot of time. But yeah, I definitely recommend checking it out because, you know, there's some cool stuff. It's demons and vampire hunter, you know, fighting. It kind of is a little bit like, say, like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
At some point, but instead of like orcs and everything, it is demons attacking like a city and like they're defending it and stuff. And it's some pretty cool stuff. But then there's like some other elements as far as the world building. There's some interesting stuff with that, and it's animated, so they can do crazier stuff. And there's like more magic and stuff
and not
like that.
Budget restrictions on.
Yeah, not at all.
effects.
Like there's some awesome action scenes. His whip is seemingly like 50 feet long at some points.
Yeah.
And, you know, he like, at one point it's awesome because it's like R-rated anime. Like there's like some priest about to kill some guy over something, and he like whips the guy's eyeball out, you know, so they can just basically show whatever they want because it's animated. And
it's on Netflix, so no like parental restrictions.
Yeah, I mean, I like watching animated stuff just because of the flexibility, you know, and the creativity that is able to be exercised with that, because there's no limitations at all. And it's not weird if you have a giant CGI monster like the end of Spawn, it doesn't look good because it's all like the same style. So yeah, I mean, because it got greenlit, I would recommend checking out. And I've heard the complaint like, oh, as soon as it starts getting good, that's when it ends. And it really does. Like it really does feel like you've only watched 1/3 of a season. Like it really, like some stuff happens, and then kind of another big turn of events occurs, and then it's over with. Yeah. And it's fine. It's totally enjoyable watching it like that. But the fact there's going to be a season 2, it's like,
so it's not a standalone story.
No. It very much like feels like it's just getting started, which is totally fine. And I guess that's why it's not like more of a movie.
Well, too, I think the turnaround time on an animated series might be more than a live action series, depending on what it is.
I don't know, because it seems like they didn't announce that long ago. But granted, like, they only did 4 episodes, you know.
Yeah, because they're like hand drawn animation, like versus like 3D or, you know, I guess like South Park or stuff. There's a lot of stuff. I think I'm not sure what the timelines are. Maybe that's why they don't have like 12 episode seasons or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was pretty good. And
well, the level of intricacy. the level of intricacy in the animation matters too.
Yeah, the animation's pretty good. You know, I'm not like a huge anime fan, and I'm not saying that because I dislike it, but I just don't watch a lot of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that I watch, I'll just watch over and over, like Ghost in the Shell or Akira, kind of the baseline entry anime stuff. And that animation is so good that anytime I watch anything else and it's not like close to that level, I'm like, oh, this is okay. You know, so it's not like, obviously it's not the highest budgeted anime ever produced, but it's well done.
Yeah.
And it looks good. It's very cool that they did that, because not something you would kind of expect just to come out of left field and it also be good. You know what I mean? You would expect that to kind of be, I don't know, anywhere else. I would have saw this being kind of a little bit bogus, but yeah, it was worth watching.
Yep. So now we'll discuss Spider-Man: Homecoming without spoilers.
Yeah.
So just general thoughts on it, just because it's out in theaters, it's new, and I think it's good to juxtapose that against Spawn, which is what comic movies were in the 90s. Because in 97, like, that's in the same era as Batman and Robin. It was the year before Blade, which really didn't position itself as a comic book movie. And then a couple years before X-Men, which came out in 99 or 2000, and was what kind of set off the current wave of superhero films with Spider-Man. So, Spider-Man: Homecoming it did well at the box office. It debuted at like close to 120 million, which is above expectations.
Did they say this was the highest grossing one, right under Spider-Man 3, I think?
I believe so.
But who knows with inflation?
Well,
because there's a lot of
times. If you do inflation, then it definitely doesn't beat it. Because Spider-Man 1 was over $100 million in 2002. So, and then Spider-Man 2 came out like over a holiday weekend. So the weekend gross is a little bit different. Because I think it was like a 4th of July weekend or something. So like it bled from like Thursday, Friday through to like Tuesday or something. So you can't really directly compare it, but I think they said it was the highest debut for a standalone Marvel film that's not a sequel, which is a lot of qualifiers.
They love to just truck those out like, okay, this is the best performing, no qualms about Wonder Woman, but like the best performing superhero film directed by a woman, or you know what I mean?
It's like so it's the girl that I dated years ago that we only did this, and this. But we don't, like, there's, like, the crap people use, like, qualifying statements a lot. Like, so that aspect of it is just, you know, the business. But, like, the actual movie
But it's
itself.
a good film, so I'm glad for all their successes, however they want to qualify it.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's doing well.
Because first and foremost, like, it's a fun movie. It's like, because Wonder Woman and this being out in the same summer, it's like, oh, the superheroes can jump around and be happy and, you know, be characters that have hope in them and not be dour, downbeat, blue color graded.
Well, that right there, I think, is the difference. That a lot of those are, you know, your mid 30s or 40-year-old disgruntled male heroes.
Yeah.
And that's what's so awesome about Wonder Woman is it's a female hero, so it has a different feel. You have a different, you know, protagonist, and the movie reflects that.
Well,
and Spider-Man's the same thing. It's a teenager, and it makes it feel way fresher than just seeing another Marvel film. To me, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, we have another grown-up superhero. This is something like Ant-Man, where it's like, he was almost like, you know, he was a criminal before Ant-Man was. So it's...
And two, it's funny that I just thought about this, like, Spider-Man still falls victim to the dead parent syndrome with superhero films, where everybody's parents are dead.
Yeah.
Like, Wonder Woman's parents aren't dead because her mom was still alive. But then, like, in Spider-Man Homecoming, like, so you have Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, and something that I actually, like, liked about it in that regard was you have, because obviously, like, Tom Holland is, like, 22 currently, I believe.
Really?
But, like, I think when they started shooting Captain America Civil War, which is his first appearance, he was 19, but he looks 15. Yeah. So he passes for the part perfectly.
And he has enough, I guess, spunk and upbeat enthusiasm where he feels like a teenager. You know, he doesn't feel like a disgruntled person in their late 20s, early 30s like we are.
Well, then there's even a joke in the movie about the gruff interrogation voice.
Oh,
that
was
that was pretty good. But like I was gonna say, like, the part I liked about Marissa Tomei being Aunt May is that she is 52 years old, so she's right around the same age as Robert Downey Jr. And typically, women at that age are portrayed differently than men at that age. because men are played, like Harrison Ford, you know, was played as like the lead man sex symbol until he was 70. And like the James Bond films with the different actors, and now I'm blanking on his name, the one who passed away recently.
Roger
Moore. Roger Moore was playing like the playboy up into his like mid-60s. And so you have that double standard.
So how old was she? 52?
52.
Somebody pointed out that Marissa Tomei is actually a year older than a year older as Aunt May in Spider-Man than Rue McLaughlin or McCallaghan when she started filming Golden Girls. So
like,
very different.
So one,
which is the slutty Golden Girl, if you're not familiar.
But the point of that was, like, in the movie, she was still played, and not like as a joke, as like people were into her, because like Tony Stark made a joke about like he's like, Aunt May, well, should be scantily clad, and he's like, oh, I went too far. And then, like, when they, like, Peter and her go out to eat at a restaurant, and, like, the servers are flirting with her.
I'm a fan of Marissa Tomei. Like,
so it's one of those things.
Top 5, maybe? Top 10?
I just thought it was really cool that they have a female character who is 50, and they're letting her play, you know...
sexy.
They're letting her play sexy, or, you know, just
like
normal.
Robert Downey Jr. is, you know, sexy, as William would say.
Well, as I would say, but then, like, you know, like, or like Daniel Craig, all these different actors that are, you know, in good shape and look better than their age. But for women, they typically, once you hit a certain age, like, okay, you're grandma.
Yeah.
As opposed to she's out there and, like, Tony Stark's like, oh...
Do you think that's a new cat call? Like, oh, here comes an Aunt May.
Well, I just thought that was like a thing that really didn't require any effort. I mean, on their part, like, casting her was probably an easy decision, because even if she was just Peter Parker's mom, she's obviously old enough to be that. Because, you know, based on the ages that they're playing with, they really established what her age in the movie was. But I just thought it was cool that they have her being, because it's not like the Aunt May in the Sam Raimi films who looked like a grandma.
Yeah.
Nothing against the actress. She did a great job.
I love Aunt May.
And she was a very perfect portrayal of what a lot of the comics and cartoon versions of Aunt May were. This is just the entire Spider-Man concept has been revamped a little bit. And in some aspects, it makes a lot more sense. Like, Tony Stark is the one that gave Spider-Man his cool, nice-looking outfit, or his uniform or costume. Because it was somewhat unrealistic in the other movies that these guys that weren't professional costumers on, like, Broadway were making these costumes that looked amazing.
Yeah.
So that was like a leap of logic. It's like you just had to go with it. But in this movie, it makes sense that he had his own, like, crappy costume, and then Tony Stark gives him the nice-looking high-tech one. That's actually something that makes a lot of sense. And that was good. Aunt May is younger and isn't being played like a grandma character.
Yeah, I think something that I noticed right away, too, was the huge diversity in this film, which was, again... It felt like it took place, you know, in a place with a lot of diversity, you know, like New York.
Because current day in New York is a very diverse place,
yeah,
so the movie more represented that
it was
in a way
cool
that didn't...
Classrooms and everything.
It didn't call attention to itself, and they didn't talk about it on the press tour. It's just like, here's these characters, you know, these characters are these different backgrounds, and we don't need to talk about it.
I did see somebody point out, though, like... it only took Marvel like six white writers to make a ethnically diverse film full of like background actors and
well,
like...
it's funny too. As I was thinking about it the other day, so like when you look at Hollywood, there's a bunch of Chris's. There's Chris Evans, Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pine. I think I'm forgetting one.
Yeah, there's the other Chris that just had a birthday that's in Adaptation and the Muppet Movie and October Sky. Anyway, he's a stellar actor.
But it's just like, you have these movies, so then to have a cast that's a little bit more diverse without really calling attention to itself about the fact. They weren't trumpeting it like in reviews, like, or the studio wasn't pushing that. They're just like, oh, we're going to cast a high school that's a little bit more diverse than we usually show. And hopefully more stuff like that continues to happen, and it's not a thing. It's just, it's what it is.
Well, something else, too, you know, we didn't mention earlier. This is directed by the guy who did Clown.
Which we roundly did not care much for.
Yeah. And it's funny, he went from making a fake trailer and slapping Eli Roth's name on it to get attention to directing a Spider-Man film, which is a bigger budget than Eli Roth has ever had and probably will ever have.
So he leapfrogged Eli Roth by invoking his name. And he also, I think he mostly got the movie based on the movie Cop Car,
yeah.
the Kevin Bacon movie that was like a big Sundance thing a few years ago.
Chances are he wouldn't have got Cop Car without Clown.
Oh, yes,
you know,
yeah. So his progression through Hollywood is owed to Eli Roth, so you can thank him. But, you know, overall, it's a very different beast than any of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, because those were very much, Peter Parker is the only, you know, hero out there, and then the villains, like in the first two movies, came from science experiments with, like, scientists, like, who... You know, like Alfred Molina, I thought was really good in Spider-Man 2 as Dr. Octopus and Willem Dafoe. Even though it's a bit Power Rangers-ish now, at the time he was very good, like Green Goblin. He chewed the scenery up completely. But this movie, Michael Keaton, I think, is the best villain the Marvel Universe has had so far, in that he has realistically grounded reasoning for being a villain, and goes about it in a way that's very workmanlike and not grandiose and not... he's not just like a one-note character that...
He's not there for somebody's Spider-Man just to fight. You know, it's not there just because the movie needs a villain. I mean, granted, obviously it does need a villain, but...
But they have a villain that points out that he's not that different from Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And points out in a way that, you know, he's the working class version. And without giving spoilers on all this stuff, like, I just think that was handled well, and the overall end to the movie left me happy with the way the villain was handled. And it's Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
So he's awesome in everything.
Yeah. You know, from Batman to now the villain, and then Birdman before this.
Well, so, like, was it old, like, so in Batman, in The Dark Knight, Harvey Dent's like, he's like, you either die a hero, live long enough to become the villain. So Michael Keaton went from Batman to Birdman to the Vulture. So he made a slight transition across flying creatures to become a villain. But the special effects on his suit and all that, like, you know, it was, like, his suit was cool. And I thought that he was a very good villain, and I liked his motivation and how they tied the story into it. I mean, it still did the thing a lot of those types of movies do, or all movies do, really, where... the characters get brought into relationships with each other because of kind of coincidental things, which most movies have to do that just for the sake of, like, storytelling, like Star Wars. You know, R2-D2 and C-3PO had to land on the planet close to where Luke and Obi-Wan were. So there are certain shortcuts you have taken stories just for the things that congeal and not take 5 hours to come together.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like...
I liked a lot of the story arcs in the film. You know, and some of the moments, like, you know, the one you see from the trailer, the ship thing, that was totally cool, fine. I kind of knew where it was going because the trailer even shows the end of that.
The trailers for the movie show too much.
Yeah, but, like, a lot of my favorite moments are him being Peter Parker, like a kid. And too, some of the Spider-Man moments where he's not, you know, he's not Batman or Iron Man, and he's not Spider-Man from... the other Spider-Man movies. Like, that was also what was so great about this, is he isn't the hero in this to save the world. He's a kid trying to learn how to be a hero, you know, and it's not just like he has nowhere to go. Like, he has a lot of room to grow.
Well, because the thing I liked about it was in the other Spider-Man films, he got up to speed, like the Tobey Maguire ones and the Andrew Garfield ones. Like, Spider-Man got up to speed pretty quickly and was pretty good at his job. And this one, he spends a lot of it being pretty terrible at it, and not doing a very good job.
And even by the end of it, you know, he still has room to grow, even though he has grown throughout the film.
Yeah, as a person,
like if you're talking about heroes that are going to save you, like on the Marvel list, he's pretty down low still because he is inexperienced, and that's like a really fun, interesting thing. I think that
it harkens back to the comics where he was like it took a while for him to get good.
Yeah, I really like that element, and it really made it feel fresh. I mean, again, different thing, but like just like Logan was like, okay, this is your old man Logan, and this is different.
Young man Spidey.
This is different in a lot of different ways. This is how this was, only it was from a teenager perspective instead of an old man.
Yeah,
and that made the whole thing lighter, and you know. There was like one really great moment of drama in it that, I know you kind of sort of brought up. I don't want to bring up anything with spoilers, but that I absolutely loved and was like, okay, this is like one of the best dramatic moments, I think, and like moments of tension in a Marvel film.
I know what you're talking about, and I agree.
Yeah, and I was like, this
is
like phenomenal. Like, this is better than any moment in a lot of those films.
Like, if you compare that to like some of the BS from like the Thor movies or Just like if you compare like not even spoiling what it is, like there's a moment like you said, like there's a moment in that, or if you compare that to anything with like Red Skull and Captain America: The First Avenger,
oh yeah,
or anything from Iron Man 2,
yeah,
or like it just blows it out of the water.
Yeah,
because...
and so it has some great moments like that, but then it also is fun throughout. And yeah, I've heard people say, look, Spider-Man, like the old Spider-Man, especially Spider-Man 2, has some like dramatic weight that this doesn't have. And I agree that there are some like great things about that.
There's not
film.
A morality lesson in the movie.
Yeah,
it's more of just a character. Like, and I read an interview with the director John Watts, and I read some stuff with Tom Holland, and something that made, before I saw it, something that made me get excited was they said that their idea when like they're pitching the movie, or when John Watts was like pitching the movie to the studio, he's talking about Peter Parker more as Marty McFly. Or, you know, a lot of John Hughes-esque stuff.
That's what I kept hearing, John Hughes, and that almost made me cringe a little bit, because as much as I love John Hughes, people throw that name around.
That people use
and
for
it's
stuff.
like, you can't just be a John Hughes. And it was not John Hughes in that we're going to mimic The Breakfast Club or something, you know, or Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
It was John Hughes in that they're really going to make an honest attempt to let this film feel like a high schooler movie. You know what I mean? And not just a slapstick sex comedy.
Yeah.
It really did try to feel like, okay, this is the world they're living in,
yeah.
and you spend a lot of time in it. You spend a lot of time in school with them,
yeah.
and that was what was so great about it. Again, it kept it totally fresh and different than all the other Marvel films.
And the other thing, too, like something it did that, you know, more social stuff, it didn't do the damsel in distress thing that all the movies had done. Because you look back, like... a lot of those superhero films for a long time was like, guy gets superpowers, has to save girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And this movie didn't do that at all. And I appreciate that because that's a worn out trope. And, you know, with Wonder Woman and stuff like that, like maybe it's time to stop making the female characters, not only superhero or action films, be the damsel in distress needs to be saved, and let them be more active participants in the story. And, you know, they're going to have like Captain Marvel. And if, you know, it only took them however many movies it took to get a female.
Well, at this point, you know, if it works for the story, I'm totally cool with it. Go for it. But at this point, yeah, it's a really tired trope. Because more than anything,
in Spider-Man,
you know?
In the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 1 and 2, in Part 3, was Mary Jane in danger? I don't think she was. I don't remember.
I only saw that movie once.
I think Spider-Man had to go to the construction site and fight Venom and Sandman, which had like the newscast, if I remember correctly. Then Amazing Spider-Man 1, he kind of had to save Gwen Stacy, even though she's a little bit more proactive than in like the other films. And then in Amazing Spider-Man 2, he had to save her, or not. She died in Amazing Spider-Man 2. There's no spoilers. That franchise ended, so there's a new Spider-Man. You can spoil the old Spider-Man.
That is true. If they made a whole other series, I think that it's past the, you know.
And like, too, Andrew Garfield did not look like a high schooler at any point in those movies, really. And they had him play kind of like a smarmy dick Spider-Man. And this one feels like an exuberant, excited, awkward kid Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And they don't do the people going out of their way to pick on, like, the Andrew Garfield one's like, oh, this guy is like a male model and is a, you know, actor by trade. And he looks like a, you know, model and stuff. But everyone at school picks on him and is mean to him because he dresses incredibly well. He just doesn't, like, but like in this one, it's like, okay, it made sense that people would kind of joke on him. Or not even joke on him so much, it's just like, there's just a guy in his class is a dick. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, that rang more true than the other stuff.
Yeah, and it's really just one person that it's like, is this jealousy? Is this person like, what, you know?
Yeah, so all that I dug. The movie overall, I enjoyed it a lot. It's a fun summer movie.
They do take the chance to pump up some other Disney properties with some huge Star Wars toy placement.
Yeah, but like the thing is, like they use their IP they own.
Yeah,
and they use that to cross promote and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's not unrealistic.
No, it's not. It's great, and I actually brought that up just because that was like the nerdy element to him, and they don't make fun of him for it, but it's like
it didn't stick out to me like a sore thumb like it does in some stuff. When people are like, "Are you gonna go pull around the Ford F-150 pickup truck?
Yeah.
What about the Audi?" There's all like that just felt more organic to the characters.
Yeah, it totally did. It was just a point of like they're making a lot of money right now. You know what I mean? Like the Marvel and Star Wars, and
they are the most sure thing in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So if you had to give the movie a score out of 10, what would you give it before moving to Spawn?
I would give it. I want to watch it again. Obviously, at least a 9, just because it was extremely enjoyable.
Yeah.
You know, I would easily watch this again. Like, it's hard to compare to the old Spider-Mans because this film also couldn't do the things those films did. It has a huge disadvantage that it's the third one, the third relaunch.
Yeah, since 2002, it's the third Spider-Man and the sixth standalone movie.
So
seventh if you include Civil War.
They were up against a lot, and they sidestepped so many things and took so many right turns. Spider-Man 2, I need to revisit that because that one, I love that one. It was excellent. I love the first one too. And it'll always be hard to kind of actually compare those just because nostalgia for it.
Different era.
Yeah, I had different standards for it because of when it came out. But on a base level, I guess 9 out of 10 because it's super fun and enjoyable, and it was like a great summer movie.
Because I still think that the most the best directed villain sequence in any of the Spider-Man films is the Dr. Octopus operating table scene in Spider-Man 2. But so for this one, like I think it's at least an 8 out of 10 because I super enjoyed it. Like it's not like gonna be on my top 5 of the year list probably by the end of the year once everything's came out.
I was thinking to be on my top 10, I would think.
Like in terms of all movies, like I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I would watch it again. Everybody in the theater enjoyed it and was happy with it when we were watching it. You know, I just saw it myself at a Thursday screening because I wanted to get ahead of all the weekend crowds. But yeah, like everybody there was excited.
Where does it rank? I'm not saying rank them all, but the Marvel list of films, like, is it your top 5 Marvel, top 10 Marvel?
At this point, I'd say it's probably top 5 because I would much rather rewatch that than Avengers: Age of Ultron. Like I've rewatched Civil War because it's on Netflix. And, like, Captain America Winter Soldier I really liked. And, like, Iron Man 1 and 3. There's, like, a lot of those movies, like, here and there. But a lot of them are kind of disposable and kind of one-time watches. But this one I think is fun. And then I think they said that there's going to be a trilogy of films where the next 2 are different. Like, each one is a year of Spider-Man's high school career. So the next one will be when he's a junior. And then the one after that will be when he's a senior. So... in terms of how all that pans out with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, who knows?
They better shoot that fast before he grows a beard.
Yeah.
He's already in his early 20s.
Well, they don't want, like, a 35-year-old senior in high school.
Yeah.
But, I think they plan to have him out, like, 2019 and 2020 or 2021 or something.
I think the humor in it adds to the rewatchability for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think. I'm like, wait, what Marvel films do I like better than this? I liked Iron Man 3 a whole lot, and that first one was good. It had some problems. But I'm like, what? And I forgot about Guardians. I'm like, I like Guardians a whole lot. But really, like, kind of, honestly, for me, it's a toss-up between, like, Guardians, this, and, like, I need to watch Iron Man 3 again, but, like, it's a kind of a toss-up for me. Like, this is one of my most enjoyable Marvel films, I think. And I really like, again, that they're doing something good with a villain. It's a different approach. It's not just, okay, you have your Captain America, which it's in a different era, but here's another hero.
Yeah.
And then, Iron Man, different approach, but here's another adult hero. Thor, different approach, but he's an adult male hero. And it's like, okay, I've seen this story before. It's just they're replacing the superpowers and the backstory, and like granted, the characters are different, but, it was feeling very samey. And now it's like, okay, I'm very excited about at least this series now. I
saw like a meme earlier where somebody had a screenshot from Batman and Robin or Batman Forever, and it's like, think Spider-Man Homecoming had an original story. A wealthy billionaire takes a young kid under his wing that has acrobatic skills and helps him fight a man in an exoskeleton suit. I'm assuming they mean Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin. But yeah, so accepting all that, fun movie. I think it delivered what I wanted out of it, so I'm excited to see more out of that universe. But now moving on to the review of Spawn, which is a comic book movie from 1997 that had Michael J. White, John Leguizamo in it, Martin Sheen, and it came from a very different era in the comic book to movie transition, because you had like the modern superhero movie, you can argue where it goes, but I think it's like you have like the Superman movies from the late 70s, like 78 or 79, whenever it came out. So you had that, and then you had the sequels to it that kind of got further away from that, and then you came to Batman in 89, the Tim Burton, Michael Keaton one, which I think was really what ushered the current era of comic movies. But it took so you had that movie in 89, and then you had Batman Returns a few years later that kind of made them go, ugh. This isn't for kids.
Yeah.
And then Batman Forever, and that movie was successful, but was going further away from what people, I think it went more cartoonish. And then Batman and Robin was just bad. And during the entire 90s, they tried to make a Superman movie with so many different people that didn't work. There's like the previs stuff and the costume test you can see with Nicolas Cage. And then Tim Burton was supposed to direct it, and it was supposed to be Superman Lives, and there's the whole Kevin Smith story. So then in the mid to late 90s, you had Spawn, you had Blade, which Blade really wasn't sold as a superhero Marvel film. It was more of a Wesley Snipes action movie of vampires.
Yeah, I think that's a higher rated success than a comic book film based on, everything that was happening prior to this.
And then you had like X-Men at the very end, and then you got into Spider-Man, and then you had the entire boom that happened now. But Spawn came out before comic book movies were a sure bet. It was before they were the now money-making machine that they can be.
And now they're kind of tired now. Now it's not a novelty to have a comic book movie. It's like now Spawn is trying to come back in. Granted, he's been trying to come back for a while, but it's like Spawn maybe should have came back in like 2010 before things really got crazy. At this point, it's just going to be like, oh, another superhero film,
Well, and two, there's like all the obscure properties been turned to superhero films. You have like the smaller stuff like Kick-Ass, that was the Matthew Vaughn film from a few years ago. And then you've had the smaller property. Then you have like the graphic novel stuff like Preacher was turned into an AMC series. And, people argue if they like that or not, but it's a series and it got a second season, so it had some level of success. And then you've had other properties that have been out there. But Spawn, the director was Mark A.Z. DePay. I think once again, this is the pronunciation episode.
He was like he did a bunch of visual effects for a ton of films. I think like Jurassic Park.
Yeah, Terminator 2, Back to the Future. So somebody that had, an effects background, but directed like a bunch of animated films.
Yeah, it
and
seems like he's doing a bunch
stuff.
of knockoff stuff like
Frankenfish.
Reef 2, which is like Finding Nemo 2 knockoff.
Halloween Town High.
Yeah.
So before that, he directed Herbie Hancock, whatever that was. But Spawn was a movie that when it came out in 97, I forgot what it came out. It was a summer movie, I think. Wasn't it? It was August 1st, 1997. So when this came out, I was like 11 in middle school. Or I was 11 or 12, and it came out in middle school. I was a big fan of the comics, and I'd watched the HBO series that I think was the same era. Because I remember...
I'm pretty sure it was. Spawn kind of was...
It was 97 to 99, so it was that same era. Yeah. And so I was a big fan of the comics, and I had, some of the action figures, stuff like that. And I was super excited for the movie. And I remember, like, the different still shots I saw from it over time looked great. Like, the Violator... Because some of the practical Violator looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, once Spawn is in the suit... And then some of the thing that kills me is in the promo pictures, they had Spawn wearing like an actual cape. Looks good. Not in the movie. Mm-hmm. It's all the CGI crap that would look worse than PlayStation 2 graphics probably. And I mean, like, accepting like the CG stuff, which is really overused, and the movie probably should have really had a budget that was 4 times what it ended up being. But it was an unproven property, so doing that is incredibly risky.
And
so
based on that
script,
I would not have given them more than $100.
The movie, it gives you a Cliff Notes version of the first however many episodes of the Spawn, or the first however many issues of the Spawn comic. It moves very, very quickly. And in the beginning, I forgot how goofy it was. Yeah. Like the assassination stuff with Al Simmons. And then Martin Sheen, and how scenery chewing and
to back this up real quick. So we were both talking. How did you feel about it when it came out?
When it came out, I liked it, but I think it was confirmation bias in the same way that when I saw the Phantom Menace, I'm like, did I like that? Well, I think I liked it.
Well, for me, I thought Spawn was a cool looking thing. I think I had some of the comics. Then I'd buy them. Basically, I went to Kroger's. I think this was before I knew that there was really comic book shops in town. Maybe I did, but
I used to buy them at Kroger too.
Yeah, I would get Spawn occasionally at Kroger. Sonic the Hedgehog, the Archie series, and Ninja Turtle, the Archie series. I would get those every time, but then Spawn I'd pick up occasionally.
Yeah.
And so I was I liked it. I didn't care if the movie was bad or good, and rented it on VHS, and I liked it. I remember thinking And I thought I remember hearing at the time somehow that it wasn't good. Like I knew that was the perception. Maybe I saw like a TV review.
Yeah.
Or I used to read in the paper all the reviews.
I remember
seeing
on Siskel and Ebert.
Yeah. So I remember knowing it wasn't supposedly good, but I remember liking it too, thinking this wasn't that bad, and probably watching it like 2 or 3 times while I had that rental. But now things are much different.
Yeah, so you have Al Simmons. He is an assassin, and he as all the stories go, he wants to get out, but he has to do one last job for his employer, Jason Wynn. And the suggestion of the clown, who's played by John Leguizamo, then he gets killed and blown up and burnt and goes to hell. And then he comes back and finds out that his wife is remarried to his best friend.
But he doesn't know it's been 5 years. He thinks
it's 5 years have passed. And then he meets Cagliostro, who's like another, he lives in like the alleys with homeless people. And this
What
guy,
is he?
Cagliostro?
Yeah.
So
he
is a former Spawn.
Okay.
Or in the movie, he's portrayed as a former Spawn that, is trying to do good or whatever. In the comics, I think it got convoluted and he tried to take over hell from Mal Bolger or something. I stopped reading at a certain point after a couple years. I didn't really keep up with it. I've only read the Wikipedia synopsis at points. But the movie just moved so fast out of that mythology, and there were so many more interesting self-contained stories they could have told, because there were other villains that weren't world-ending villains they could have approached, like the Spawn animated series did. And I think it was I think they just wanted to have the world at stake, because they have this gas, and it's tied to full spoilers for this movie too. It's not good. It's on Netflix. You can watch it. But I think that the problem with it is they wanted to have a full story arc. They wanted to have him get blown up, go to hell, become a Spawn, come back to Earth, and then have to save the world and go to hell and succeed or whatever.
And deal with all the drama of his wife.
And deal with all the family drama. So that's too much stuff for one movie. So it all moves very quickly and you get almost no investment in any of it. And then they skipped over any of the small-scale villains because he really only fights the Violator and then goes to hell and has a terrible CGI thing where he's shooting green powder everywhere. And the Violator fight, the first one, wasn't that bad. The one in the alley, that was actually decent. When they use the actual puppet and stuff or the animatronic Violator, it actually looks pretty good. And that's where a lot of the still shots were from that I saw in magazines and stuff that I was excited about. And that was okay. But
did they promote that in the comics? Did they ever show stills in the comics?
I think they did. I would need to go back.
Yeah.
I remember seeing still shots from stuff in there. And so all that I thought was very cool. That sequence I think is still cool. And Spawn gets beat.
Is that where he's driving the motorcycle?
Well, no. So that's where they fight in the alley and he gets thrown into the fence and it stabs him.
Oh, yeah.
So that fight was that was pretty cool. But the rest of it, when he is on the motorcycle and he makes the barricade in the road and all that stuff is just terrible. And you don't really have any investment in any of the characters, really.
For me, the thing I loved, or I liked a lot about it as a kid, was I liked John Leguizamo at the time. And I was like, oh, cool. He's, the Violator or whatever, and I remember thinking it was pretty funny, but now, man, it's
overwritten, overacted,
hard. And I get he was going for the Jim Carrey, the mask, you know what I mean? I feel like that's what he was kind of going for.
The beats per minute and the pacing,
but they were when you have 10 jokes in 2 minutes and 9.5 are misfires. It's hard to watch.
Yeah, when it's all just a lot of rapid fire jokes that aren't funny. Yeah. And he's oh, Spawn's crispy. None of it really lands. And there's no real weight to it because you don't really and it's one of those things too where even though the character of Al Simmons when he comes back as Spawn is burnt and disfigured, they still have his mask off most of the time. And superhero movies have always kind of done that, where they have the character out of their mask more than they're in it. But this one is why go through all the makeup if you can just put him in the mask, which looks better? And it's just because they want to have a face.
Yeah.
It's still a thing where Deadpool, I think, even had to, work on the studio some to have a lower budget level to let them have him in the mask a lot. Mm-hmm. And even though he's out of the mask a lot too in that movie, but like, well, too, if you just compare Deadpool to Spawn, it shows you how much better prosthetics are now than they were at that era. But like the Spawn, like, and the suit's like super bulky and a lot of stuff.
His head seemed too small for this. Or no, wait, I can't remember. The mask looked too big for the body. His mask almost made him look like.
Because the mask the mask looked pretty good.
Yeah, the mask looked good, but like the proportions made him look not as powerful, I think.
Yeah.
When he's like walking down the alley.
And the CGI cape, I think it was a huge misfire to use that as much as they did. And all, like, the Malbolgia character's jaw doesn't move. Like, I mean, that could have been a creative choice, but also likely a limitation of the computer animation at the time.
That was like a computer animator student cramming to do his final,
like, there are
and
apps,
like getting it done the night before.
There
like,
are apps now for the iPhone and Android phones or whatever, where you have like a character and you can just talk into your phone and they talk, and it's more realistic than Malbolgia in that movie. And they just it was all way too truncated in terms of the story. They covered way too much stuff. And then, like, Jessica Priest, like, one of the assassins, she was, like, straight out of, like, a super B movie. Mm-hmm. Like, she would have fit in Return of the Living Dead or something in terms of, like, the way that character was written. And the costuming was terrible for a lot of the characters.
Yeah, it's like now, you know, the appeal of this back then, I guess, was the novelty of this kind of, like, pulpy story. You know what I mean? Like, and two, I think probably, like, Hell was a big thing. Like, the origin story heavily involves hell, and it's a big part of it. I think that maybe was some of the appeal back then now. But now it's just, it feels so misguided, and like they had no idea really how to, you know, like what they should have done. And I get it, because, you know, there hadn't been a ton of comic book stories adapted that maybe weren't well-worn stories. You know what I mean? Like Superman, Batman, and all that. Like, but
it was before they made adult superhero films, really. Mm-hmm. And not like they're R-rated or had sexual content, but just like The Dark Knight, even though kids enjoy it, is more of a crime film that has a superhero in it than it is a superhero film for kids.
Yeah.
And Spawn, with its PG-13 rating, was going after the adolescent male market, which I was a part of at the time, and I enjoyed it at the time. But as a movie, like, this is the stuff I'm sure when my parents took me to see it, they're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Because watching it now, it's like, I guess too, it's a difference of time, but, and two, like I said, there was just too much information. What they should have had is it been one of his Malbolgia enemies. Maybe the entire villain was just the Violator, and there wasn't all this other stuff, and you had a narrative arc around it. As it is, just felt like way too much stuff. And then, like, the final fight scene where he fights the Violator, like, in the house before he goes to hell, or not the final fight scene, but the scene where he fights in the house against Violator, it's just terrible. Mm-hmm. And he used his chains, like, cut off Violator's head. It's like...
Did that all happen in the living room there?
Yes.
Which is, like, a weird setting. But I actually remember that scene for some weird reason.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the scenes I remember from watching this. But, yeah, it's, like, really to have your... I mean, I'm not... It's interesting, but visually it was just a mess. It was just super boring.
And it just didn't... To me, it didn't work. And... Like I said, so like Michael J. White as Spawn, like he was trying his best, and you do have to give the movie a little bit of props for having an African-American lead in a superhero film in 97 before, like I said, it's a year before Blade, and it took Marvel until Black Panther to get like a African-American lead in one of the movies, and not just be a, like, you know, secondary ancillary character. But, so, I mean, it has that going for it, and it was an adaptation of like Spawn was one of the biggest comics at the time, but it wasn't like a character like Spider-Man or Batman that had, you know, however many years of history behind it. It was more of a newer character that came around in the 90s.
And it's still very 90s
And
now.
I think that the Venom movie has a real possibility to go down the route and be similar to this if they don't watch themselves and try to make sure it's a fully formed arc and story. But, like, because both movies will have a symbiote, because in Spawn he had the symbiote, which really was handled, I think, poorly. And that his suit was like a living organism that would help him or whatever. Like, I think they rushed through way too many things.
Yeah.
There were so many things. There's a character like in the comic, in the cartoon or the animated series, like Billy Kincaid, there was like an ice cream man that was like a child rapist and stuff. And like in the show, you have like smaller scale stories or Spawn's going after like street level people, and then there's like gangsters involved, and there's like a cyborg that's called Overt Kill, I think. And there's stuff like that. So smaller scale stories they could have told that would have probably given them more room to like dig into the character a little bit. Mm-hmm. But since they did like this, trying to encompass the arc that took the comic that most of its run to get to in like an hour and a half, like they rushed it, and you don't really care. Like it just, the Cagliostro character almost feels like a joke because it's played very broadly. It could have easily fit into, not to keep using this as like the 90s Power Rangers.
Yeah,
you almost feel like he could have showed up in the Power Rangers and saved the day or something. So you had all these different elements in a movie that really should have been rated R, and it really should have been more focused with less CG.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, after watching this as a kid and not seeing it since then, I may have seen it for a second on TV here and there, but I always thought, all right, yeah, I want to see a Spawn remake. Let them try to tackle it again.
Yeah.
But honestly, now, after watching it the other night, I'm like, nah, I think the world's good without any Spawn.
Now, the animated series ended after 3 seasons and didn't finish the story because they intended to make more and they didn't. That I would like to see continued.
Yeah. Well,
that like had Keith David as the voice, and I thought it was a well done show, and I enjoyed it, and it stayed pretty small scale. Didn't get into a lot of the more like heaven and hell battle stuff that happened in the comics. It left it more to like earthbound people, which I thought worked. So like I would like to see more of the animated series, which if you have Amazon Prime, it was on there through the HBO stuff. But like,
is it on HBO?
I think it should be on HBO now if you have it too. So
what about a Netflix live action series? They give them $20 million.
I just think an animated series works best for it because the amount of money you need to really do it well is so much. And the reason that movie from '97 I think falls so short is they try to do all the grandiose stuff the comics did, but the comics are like written panels or hand-drawn panels that had no budget for what was on screen. The movie had a budget. And I think it was like around $40 million, which if you adjust for inflation is probably more like 70 or 80 today. But even at that, like, that's really not enough to show what that movie needed to show if they wanted to do the story they did. Now, the story wasn't well written, and like I said, it just comes off as cheese. It comes off as all those like 90s, like the espionage stuff at the beginning just reminds me of like those bad like 80s like sequels or like
the outfits, the set. Like, everything about it was so bad.
Because you compare that to, like, Predator. So the Predator, like, when you have, like, Dutch and the entire crew doing, like, their mission at the beginning, like, that's well done things in that vein.
That's well done cheese.
So, yeah. So if you had somebody, like...
Well, and also, too, like, them... Granted, there's a difference here, PG-13 and rated R, but, like, you know, when he's getting killed... And just think about how effective it is in that RoboCop cut that shows that. Like,
if you had
like
this
that
movie,
would have been really cool to see.
That's a good
kind of so you'd really be in his headspace of like what was done to him.
So like if you look at if you had a Spawn directed in that era with more practical effects, so you went more of the RoboCop route and did practical stuff. And it was directed by John McTiernan, who did like Predator and Die Hard, or you had
and it stayed street
Paul
level.
Verhoeven, who did RoboCop and Starship Troopers.
And it didn't try to do hell because the CGI was not up to snuff with that budget level at the time. So it's like, just stick it, make it more grounded, and then like do a little tease. If they don't make another one, no big deal. There's a comic book series people could read. You know what I mean? It's not like there's not a story to explore.
Like, if the story's finished or it's not, it's ongoing. So it wasn't like a movie that just left these threads hanging.
Yeah. You could have just teased something more, and if they never made another one, no big deal because there's other mediums to explore this thing. And it's like, keep it at ground level or...
The movie as a whole, like... When I saw it originally, I enjoyed it. But at the same time, like, there's a lot of stuff I enjoyed back then that was terrible.
See, for me, a lot of times I'll go back and watch stuff and I'll think, yeah, I still like find things I enjoy about this. Granted, it's not maybe as good as I remember, but I still like it. There's very few movies that I watch now that I watched back then that my opinion has completely changed, you know? And this is one of those.
Well, there's like cartoon series that I watched when I was really young.
Oh, yeah.
Like, cause, the real Ghostbusters has been on or off different streaming services in the past year, and I rewatched some of that, and it's like, man, that's really not good.
Yeah.
Nostalgically, like, yeah, I enjoyed it when I was a kid, and like, so I watched it, but like, it wasn't good. So like, this movie, I feel like if you really want your fix of Spawn, read the comics, watch the animated series from HBO. Or, you know, I don't think there was ever really a good Spawn video game. I remember there being different ones like PlayStation, Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I played one of those.
None of those were necessarily that good from what I remember.
He's in Soul Calibur 3, I think, for Xbox.
So play Soul Calibur where he's in it. Or, like I said, if you really want the Spawn experience, the animated series, the comics, the movie just feels like a watered-down, truncated version of the story that is 90s cheese that...
It's not good cheese, really. It's kind of hard to watch.
Because, like, I'm trying to think of examples, like, you know, like production quality-wise and stuff, like Batman Returns, the one with Penguin and Catwoman, that one has, I think that's darker than Spawn.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that it, you know, doesn't have hell and stuff, like, if you had done it more in that vein and had it more stylized and practical effects versus CG and stuff, I think it might have worked a lot better. Mm-hmm. But I still think it's a movie that was just too far. It was made too early because the CG wasn't where it should have been for that movie to get made. But it'd be so passe now to give it. They wouldn't give it a $100 million budget. Yeah. They're struggling to get a $10 million budget. So, like, maybe because I know, like, they talked before about making, like, a Sam and Twitch series about the detectives.
I was about to ask you about
Spawn
that,
as an outlying character. And I think that was more of what Todd McFarlane had been talking about making. So that might work as, like, a limited series on, like, an HBO or a cable network as a Preacher and all these different things can work. That could work, too. Where you only have glimpses of the Spawn character and you see, like, the background story is like the bigger like Spawn versus the different characters, and then you have the detectives that are more seeing the outlying like human effect. Like that could work. But
I remember liking those characters. I don't really remember their personalities too much. But
like the animated series focused more on them and showed them investigating stuff and being involved in it.
I remember specifically drawing them more than I drew Spawn for some weird reason. Like I really loved the look of them.
A series with them as the leads and Spawn is like this outlying character. Kind of like in Game of Thrones, like you have like the human characters at the center of it, and then like the mythical characters and creatures and all that stuff on the fringes of the universe. Mm-hmm. If you had it more of that layout, then it could work. But I don't know we'll ever see that because I think it may have been past time for that. Because it's a comic that hasn't been like super popular in the popular conscious and talked about in years. It still has its fans.
So is it still? You said it's still running?
I think, it's still going on, but it's not a level of awareness. I mean, comics as a general, even though the movies are doing great business, comics themselves are not the cultural touchstone they were in the height of their popularity in the 90s. So, just a Spawn movie, like, if they make it for super low budget and they make it more grounded and stuff, I just don't know that a first-time director and writer for films is the one to do it.
Yeah, it's weird that he's being so...
I mean, great, I get that it's his creation.
Yeah.
Or, well, I don't know, there's lawsuits over some stuff, I think. But, like, it's his creation. He drew it. He ran the comics. He ran the company. He made the toys. So I get the ownership aspect of it, not wanting to relinquish your baby to someone else. But at the same time, like...
You would think he would, like, maybe budge and say, okay, look, let me be, like, a co-director with somebody.
If they bring in somebody good and really have somebody that's into the material, I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it, but... So, it's on Netflix. You can watch it now. So, if we had to give this movie a rating out of 10, like, Derek could be on this podcast because of timing and stuff like that, but I'm sure his score would be very low based on what we were talking about. Or maybe, I don't know, he might be more forgiving, but if I had to give the movie a score out of 10, like, watching it today in terms of, like, so when I was because every week I watch the movies for the podcast, Julie's like, so what's the movie this week? And I'm like, oh, it's this. She's like, oh, can I watch that with you? And, like, some of them she's been on for, like, Get Out and stuff. Some of them it's just like, it comes a night, we just saw it together, and she didn't have time to be on the podcast. This one, I told her, she's like, I don't want to watch that at all. And there's a number of movies where she has that reaction. But then, like, when I watched it, I was like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't make you watch this. Like, if I had to give it a score today in terms of, like, what it is right now, it's like a 3 out of 10. Like, there's enough here and there that it might be worth rewatching just for nostalgia factor if you liked it when you're younger. But in terms of, like, an objectively good movie that stands on its own, it is not that. It's, like like you said, it's hard to watch at points because a lot of the stuff doesn't land. And the CG just makes, I would assume it'd be hard for a younger person to watch it that's used to modern good stuff.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because even stuff like with a huge budget, like Star Wars Episode like 1, 2, and 3, can be hard to watch for a kid that's used to the new stuff. If they go back and watch this, they're like, what?
I can't imagine watching that CGI on a giant screen in the theater.
Well, I think on theater screens it looked better than on HD at home.
That might have been it too, HD, because last time I watched this was probably on VHS.
Because I mean, like 35mm film is a high resolution and it's close. Like I think it's close to 4K when you're like properly projected and stuff. But the actual I think projecting stuff onto a movie screen, you don't see all the fine detail you do when you're at home watching it up close.
Yeah.
So it's easier to miss a lot of the visual fidelity problems and CG problems. Even though on the big screen it's much easier to spot, like, oh, there's a can there, I didn't realize that has this label on it. But I don't think it's easy to spot, especially like when you watch like a film projected version where there's film grain and it degrades over time versus watching it at home on a pristine copy. Like, yeah, so like a 3 out of 10 is as high as I can go on it. It's on Netflix. I wouldn't recommend buying it, but you can watch it. This movie, I'm sure, has fans. Everything has fans. It's just, it's one of those things. I liked it in 97. But there's a lot of stuff in 97 I like that I would not spend time on today. Like, I listened to Limp Bizkit in 97. And this movie kind of feels like that. Like, Korn and Limp... I mean, I think it's because the cover art for Korn stuff
Marilyn Manson. Isn't Marilyn Manson?
There's a Marilyn Manson song in it.
Which I liked. I was like, all right, this gives it an extra point. Just because I liked that it was very much of the era in that regard.
Yeah.
I kept thinking I'd probably give it a 2 out of 10.
So,
yeah.
Under 4 for both. 3 or lower.
Yeah. I mean, 2 or 3.
If you add our scores together, it's 5. So it gets 5 out of 20.
Yeah, it's a very hard watch, and it's like there's a million other things that you could watch that is maybe, even cheesier, but is more enjoyable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can watch stuff that is just as bad, if not worse, but is more enjoyable, and there's stuff that is even more entertaining that's just middling. Like out of all comic book heroes movies, like this is...
Well, like if you offer...
This is bottom of the barrel.
If you say, do you want to watch Blade or you want to watch Spawn? I'm picking Blade every day of the week. I'm picking,
I'd still watch probably Batman and Robin and Batman Forever over Spawn.
Yeah, I mean, there's just as much cringeworthy material, but at least it looks better.
And the cast is interesting to watch. You know what I mean? Because there's more variety of that era and everything. Just imagine how much different this movie would have been if it was, instead of John Leguizamo, it was Danny DeVito, who was like the rumored person, but just because he's a shorter actor, so it makes sense. But John Leguizamo, like at the time, I thought he did a good job. I did too.
But rewatching it just hasn't aged very well.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because like I said, I have the taste now of my 31-year-old self in 2017 versus my 11-year-old self in 1997.
Yeah.
So 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, not a good movie. Maybe I don't know. I hate to lower after giving it, but it's not a good movie. I would not recommend watching it or showing it to people.
Definitely not.
It's not even good on the level of The Room or Troll 2 where it's so bad it's good. It's just like...
It's hard to stay focused and pay attention to this film.
I was checking my phone a lot, but yeah, so it's out there. So that'll wrap up our discussion on Spawn, the 1997 movie.
We never did bring up the fact that we also watched Twin Peaks this week.
Yeah.
We have our video series for that, but on what we've been watching, we also, of course, watched that.
Yeah. So those videos
information-heavy episode, very different than the episode 8, right? So we're halfway through now, and those videos are on YouTube if you just listen to us and you don't watch on YouTube.
Yeah.
Or we have discussions of that.
So check those out. Other plugs. So Sean, you're wearing a Volumes of Blood Horror Stories t-shirt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that.
So that is for the movie, which you can now pre-order from Best Buy or a few other retailers. If you just go to Volumes, if you look at Volumes of Blood on Facebook, they have links to all that. So you can pre-order the movie now. It's coming out in early August.
Is Julie on here?
Yes.
Where?
She is the she's the
This
character.
person.
Yes. So on that shirt, if you can see it.
I directed the segment. Sorry if you're listening. I directed the segment with this guy.
Who's called The Harvester.
Again, my segment's only like 5 or 6 minutes long, but yeah.
So you can pre-order the movie now. It'll be out in early August. You can get it on Blu-ray or DVD.
From Best Buy and...
Yeah, Best Buy and a few other retailers. I think Deep Discount DVD and some others. So you can on Facebook, go to Volumes of Blood. You can find links to all that. Our short...
And you can watch the first one on Amazon Prime,
yes,
right?
The first Volumes of Blood is available on Amazon Prime, so you go watch that now if you want. And we have no involvement with that one.
And we're not making any money off it either when we say you can go pre-order it.
Yeah,
I just directed one segment, and William and Chad helped on the set that weekend. That's all. Yeah. We actually had to pay for this shirt. Yeah. So.
And there's some footage from our short film Hazard that made it into Volumes of Blood.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a little Easter egg thing, and so you can check that out, pre-order it. The short film After the Slasher that I directed, there's a teaser now that's on our Facebook and YouTube pages, so you can check that teaser out if you haven't. We submit to a few festivals, so as soon as we get the yay or nay on those, we'll know we're going to release it. If it gets into festivals, it'll be mid to late October when we put it online. If it gets declined, then we'll probably release it earlier in like September or something.
Oh, and we're also shooting Chad's
And then
short.
we're shooting a Chad Cook, who's been on the podcast a few times and works with the site, he's shooting a short called Plucked this weekend. And
with
then
a P.
With a P. Plucked. And not sure exactly the release date on that, but that will be shot soon and it'll be put together. So there's at least 2 shorts we'll have coming out, and I know, like, Sean, you've been like going back and forth on something to do.
Yeah, for about a year now.
So, but you can check out.
Chad's going to be pretty short. You know, his is actually going to be like a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes.
It's going to be more similar in length to like our short films Ride or Windows.
It's very, very short, but hopefully it'll turn out pretty well. We went to this location today and stuff, and it's only going to be a 1-day shoot, so nothing too big, but it's cool to like have our site and get stuff from, all of us kind of being able to create stuff. That's super fun.
Yeah, so I'll have more images and information on that to come once it's done. Then, as always, you're listening via iTunes. Do us a huge favor and leave a review. That helps our people on the podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, we'll always love seeing comments and back and forth. You can also email us at podcast@housebyvideostore.com with any questions or comments or suggestions for things to cover. We always love seeing any feedback. You can always find all the stuff we're doing at housebyvideostore.com. You can find links there to all of our social media accounts. The most important ones to follow us on are YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram and Twitter. And you can find all those at our website, housebyvideostore.com. If you want to find us specifically on the internet, I'm on Twitter at will_droid.
And I'm at Blevin Sean.
And Derek is at MetaWorld Derek on Twitter and Instagram if you want to follow him as well. Or you can just make sure to follow the official accounts, HBTVS_official on Instagram and Twitter. I'll probably be posting some Instagram stories this weekend when we shoot the short, so make sure to check that out.
That's going to be on Saturday.
Yeah, on Saturday the 15th of July. So keep an eye out for that. But that'll bring this episode of the House by Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video